ready to go live. And we can begin with a roll call if you would like.
Okay, call the meeting to order. Will the secretary please take roll call?
Levandy,
Here.
House, Arndt,
Here.
Boyle,
Here.
Cannon,
Here.
Fehrenbach,
Here.
Kiesler. Thought I saw Jeff.
I thought
Sorry, I was muted. I'm
Oh,
here.
that's okay. Kumanich,
Here.
Meadows,
Here.
Parcell, I know he's absent. Ritchie,
Here.
Shelley, Strom,
Here.
Tucker,
Here.
and Wheel.
Okay.
The chairperson, you have quorum.
Yes, we definitely have a quorum. We're on Zoom today. This is our first meeting on Zoom. So I'd like to go through a couple of things here so that we can get everybody to understand the process of what's going through. First of all, thanks for coming. I hope you have your coffee or teacup full and your donuts on the side. All members of the public will have a chance to address the board during public comment. So if you're a member of the public and online right now watching our meeting, be prepared if you wish to make any comments. Each vote we're going to take is going to have to be done by roll call. So we're asking each of you to identify yourself when you make your vote or motion. If you have nothing to say on an item, say pass. You don't have to comment on anything unless you want to. All votes will be taken again by roll call. That means our secretary, Amy, who is very competently running this along with Kelly, who is sitting right next to her, will call each board member's name, will indicate their vote as aye or nay. So the first item on the agenda, on our agenda, is the approval of the agenda. You have that in the packet that was emailed to you. So please take a look at that.
I move to agenda.
Nell moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second Lori Strom.
Okay.
Thank you, Lori.
Now, any discussion or changes that you wish to make on the agenda? Hearing none, I'll ask the secretary to take roll.
Levandy,
Aye.
House, Arndt,
Aye.
Boyle, Fehrenbach,
Aye.
Cannon,
Aye.
Kiesler,
Aye.
Kumanich,
Aye.
Meadows,
Aye.
Parcell, Ritchie,
Aye.
Shelley, Strom,
Aye.
Tucker,
Aye.
and Wheel. I think Pam was absent today.
Yep.
The motion passes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Next item. Approval of our February 20th minutes. Kathy submitted them and they were in your packet. Do you have any additions, comments?
Pat Cannon moves adoption.
Yes, Pat.
I just move to approve the
Okay,
minute.
Pat has moved to approve the minutes from the February 20th meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second. It's Kristen.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? And I'm going to ask the secretary to call roll, please.
Lavandi,
Aye.
House, Arndt,
Aye.
Boyle, Cannon,
Aye.
Fehrenbach,
Aye.
Kiesler,
Aye.
Kumanich,
Aye.
Meadows,
Aye.
Ritchie,
Aye.
Strom,
Aye.
Tucker.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I do have something to ask the committee to consider. The city attorney has advised council and advised all of the committee and boards that because of the pandemic, there has to be a limit to the amount of public comment. So I want to have you consider and eventually introduce as a motion. We can have some discussion on this. This was in your packet. It was a memorandum, from Primetime senior staff. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Downtown Management Board, this was from the city, is meeting via video. We are meeting in video. And in correspondence with Michigan Code 15.263, Parent 1, it is recommended for the city attorney's office that all city affiliated boards, commissions holding virtual meetings adopt a rule limiting public comment to 2 minutes per individual. So I would like you to consider that as a motion, and if there's any discussion, once the motion is introduced and we have a second, then we can go on from there. So,
The motion, it's Kristen.
please identify yourself if you want to speak.
I think I heard Kristen Shelley say she motioned, Jim.
And I said my name.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Pat Cannon seconds.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Any discussion on this?
Well, do we have a time limit that we're imposing?
Yes, 2 minutes on
2
public.
minutes? Okay, thank you. I didn't hear that.
My only question, this is Nell, Jim.
Yes.
My only question, and I really don't care about the 2 minutes. I can't remember if we've ever had members of the public, except possibly a student, come before us, is that there is now a question about the ability to do virtual meetings. I'm not concerned, but apparently virtual meetings are being held under the authority of a directive of the governor. And there's some question. It certainly has been evaluated. I've heard about it in the press, about the city council and others. I don't have any problem with our virtual meeting. I can't imagine anybody challenging it, and I have no problems with the 2 minutes. I think my only question would be, and at the moment, I can't see the date on the memo, is when that memo came out, because my suspicion is that this is important. I see it came out to us on October 12th, not sure when the earlier advice from the city attorney came, whether that has been since the Michigan Supreme Court decision or prior to it. I just wanted to raise that issue that I have no problem with 2 minute limitation. Again, I don't think we've had much public participation. I don't fully understand it for things like city council and other meetings, but maybe it's to give them time to actually do their work. But I just wanted to make the comment and raise the question, which I don't think any of us probably know firmly the answer to, and that is whether this was pre-Michigan Supreme Court decision. And I think you and Kelly and Tom will be watching, and also Lisa and Amy, very carefully what happens in terms of our ability to go forward with Zoom meetings. That said, I'm very supportive of the motion.
Thank you, Neil.
Pat Cannon.
Go ahead, Pat.
I'm not sure to what extent OMA applies to this group, We don't set policy. We advance things for consideration and approval by others. I don't think we operate under OMA, but it's not a requirement. So I don't think that would apply to us.
Kathy Boyle, when Pat's done.
I'm done.
Kathy?
Well, my understanding is the city some time ago made the determination that we are subject to the Open Meetings Act, and that's why we've been following it throughout our entire meeting. And I think that's the city's call. My understanding is that after the Supreme Court decision, the question was raised about the ability to continue Zoom meetings and whether or not that would be in violation of the Open Meetings Act. Because I also sit on the Planning Commission, I've had some discussion about the city's position right now on that issue. And my understanding is that the city, after consultation with their attorney, has determined to go forward with the Zoom meetings, understanding that they might be subject to a challenge under the Open Meetings Act, but with the belief that any deficiencies could be cured after the fact. So I think that's what we're doing. The issue of limitation of time, my understanding is because there have been some Zoom meetings that have been hijacked by a caller speaker who has then just taken over the meeting. And that's the reason to put time limits on it, so that we would control, or whoever's running the Zoom meeting would control if that were to happen. Seems very unlikely to happen for our committee, but we have such limited public comment anyway. I think a 2-minute limit will serve us well.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Dr. Levon, I just wanted to, this is Tom Fehrenbach. I just wanted to say that I think Kathy articulated that very well.
Okay. I'm going to call for the secretary to take a vote.
Levandy,
Aye.
House, Arndt,
Aye.
Boyle,
Aye.
Hannon,
Aye.
Fehrenbach,
Aye.
Kiesler,
Aye.
Kumanich,
Aye.
Meadows,
Aye.
Ritchie,
Aye.
Shelley,
Aye.
Strom,
Aye.
Tucker.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. We're now on the record. And the next item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have anybody in the queue at all right now, Amy?
I do not. I do not have anyone in the queue to speak. Obviously, if there are any items that this committee would like to discuss that are not related to the agenda, now would be the appropriate time as well.
Okay, we're open. Well, I don't hear anything. So we'll move on to comments from the chair. And first of all, again, thank you for putting up with all of the mechanisms, machinations, grief, happiness, whatever has happened since our last real live meeting. So that would be my first item to just let you know. Thank you, especially to the committee members and to the city staff who helped get this thing organized. When we get to our regular business, I'd like you to consider, I know we're on record as we approve those minutes for holding monthly meetings, but with this Zoom mechanism that we're using, it may be more prudent for us to deal with meetings that perhaps by the quarter, but we can discuss that later. But those are the comments I have. And again, thank you, thank you, thank you. So it's now open to comments from committee members.
Well,
This is Lori Strom. I have a question if our plan was ever fully adopted by the city council, because in our last minutes, we talked about that it soon would be going to the council for approval. Has that happened?
Yes, I believe it has. I spoke with the council. I was present when they voted on it.
Okay, good.
It has been approved. Yes, Lori. It happened right before COVID.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Kathy Boyle, Jim?
Kathy?
This is not really part of the action plan, but I just wanted to make sure that all committee members are aware that the Newman Lofts building, which is part of the recent development in downtown East Lansing and is a housing unit restricted to those 55 and over, has filed a request with the city council to have that restriction lifted. This was the first downtown housing that was built dedicated to seniors. They have rented a number of their apartments already to seniors. And they apparently were concerned, or they articulated that they were concerned with their ability to continue to market during the COVID era. So far, City Council has shown no inclination about raising that or restriction, about removing that restriction. But if individual members are in support of the city continuing the restriction that requires that building to be 55 plus housing, it would probably be helpful to council to hear from us individually.
Thank you.
Jim, Nell,
Yes, no.
Kathleen, may I address a question to Kathleen?
Yes.
Kathleen, I like that idea, but may I ask why? And maybe we're prohibited. Individuals certainly could make that comment. And two things: why would we not consider doing it as a committee? And two, whether or not we did, if we're doing it individually, and that's your advice, would you advise that we identify ourselves as participants in or members of this committee? That's my questions.
Okay, my response to that is, since it wasn't on the agenda, I hadn't really thought about bringing it before the committee for committee action, although I'm certainly not opposed to our doing that. That's why I basically suggested individual action, leaving it up to individual committee members about whether they want to contact council and support this. Certainly, I think it's a stronger voice if it comes from the committee as a whole, or at least it's an additional voice if it comes from the committee as a whole. And certainly if I contact them again, I've already contacted them once, but if I contact them again, I would identify myself as a member of this committee.
Thank you, Kathy. I'd also like to point out that the Senior Commission will have to deal with the issue as well. And we're not meeting until the 9th of November, but I'm assuming that we will have it on our agenda to discuss.
This is Lori Strom. I'd like to make a recommendation that as a committee, we do put forth our concerns about this, because it is one of our goals in our housing domain that we offer greater housing opportunities for 55 plus. So I think that we are well suited to defend that, because it's one of our goals in our plan.
Thank you. I'd like to suggest maybe that if we want to continue with this discussion, we move it into new business and get on with the old business that we've got in front of us here. And thank you, Lori. It looks like you're up next on the agenda to report on the accomplishments since March. with the grant funding. I'd also like to ask you to make sure you point out all of the domains that this effort covers. So go ahead.
Certainly. Well, thank you. It's nice to see everybody. It feels like it's been forever since we've been together. And way back last winter, ironically, about the same time as our plan was being finalized, and I will get to those domains. Thanks, Jim. We began the Senior Ambassador Program, which came through the MSU Age Alive initiatives. And simultaneously, the students who are members of the Social Science Scholars Organization were thinking that many seniors are isolated in our community and they wanted to address the issue of loneliness and isolation. And we had Dr. John Waller, who runs the Social Science Scholars, and Dr. Claire Luz from Age Alive come together, sharing their concerns and ideas. And we all had a meeting at prime time as a partner. And we created the Senior Ambassador Program, students being the senior ambassadors and the seniors being the hosts. And what we were excited about was, with our age-friendly community goals, the domains, the 4 out of the 8 that the isolation and loneliness address are the social isolation, the social inclusion, civic participation, and the communication, information, and community services. So each of those had discussed the issues of loneliness and isolation. So we were really excited that this all could happen simultaneously. And initially, we wanted the students to be matched with seniors that they would be given the opportunity to meet one-on-one personally. And we had scheduled in March a research forum where the students would be sharing the research that they'd been working on, not regarding this program, but just in general, where they would present to the seniors as a welcome event where they could get comfortable with one another. And then COVID hit. So that event was canceled and we had to regroup, and we realized that now with the isolation from the pandemic, it's even more imperative that we connect people to reduce this isolation. And so we just regrouped, and the students did a remarkable job of creating orientations. We did a survey. Thank you to Primetime for helping us disseminate the survey. And it was clear that seniors living in East Lansing were excited about being able to interact with MSU students. Of course, many of them being former faculty and employees at the university, they enjoy the interaction with students. So that was really beneficial to see in the survey results that this would be a positive thing. And then it also created an opportunity for our students to do a research project to look at pre and post COVID feelings about isolation. And we all agree that this would enhance the quality of life for all, that there's a win-win, it's mutually beneficial. And through the process, it also occurred to us that not only would the seniors possibly be experiencing some loneliness and isolation, but the students, now that they have to be in college remotely and not have the social access to their friends that they normally would, they too are suffering with issues of depression and loneliness. And statistically on college campuses, 1 out of 3 students tend to have issues of depression anyway. So what a great way to work for both and be mutually respectful, where the seniors can also be supportive of the students. So that was really exciting. So with this, then we heard about the AARP Challenge Grant, which is a very quick turnaround. And out of 2,800 applicants, we were selected, and we are only one of 2 in the state of Michigan that received the AARP Challenge Grant. And thank you for your support, Jeff. So we are excited because we are then able to fund the Senior Ambassador Program with staffing, as well as the Virtual Senior Center, which is a program out of New York the state of New York, and it will allow us to do programming for these seniors. And in fact, we're going to be presenting, MSU faculty will be presenting courses for lifelong enrichment. So that'll be coming up soon as well. And then there was another grant also that we received, and thank you, Kelly and Lisa. It's through the state of Michigan, and the Health and Human Services, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Kelly, for the senior centers in the state. And that was given as a startup grant to get this pilot going. And we're calling the Senior Ambassador Program a pilot because it is an experiment in itself. And the AERP grant will end in mid-December, so it's very quick turnaround. And currently, we have 7 matches, 7 seniors matched with 7 students who have all gone through extensive orientation that our student scholars designed. And we will have an evaluation component built into it, as well as the research. And we're running criminal background checks. Thank you to the City of East Lansing Human Resources for background checking the seniors, and then MSU's Human Resources background checking the students. And so it's launched, and some of the matches have already met and are in their discussion phase. So it's pretty exciting. And we'll keep you posted. Does anyone have any questions?
Please identify yourself.
I can't hear. Is there someone speaking?
I didn't hear anyone. I haven't heard anyone speak up.
This is Nell. Lori, I would just like to thank you and Kelly and the others who have been working on this. It sounds like, and AARP, it sounds like it's just a really positive step in terms of what I feel like we're sort of somewhat hogtied is the old word I would use in terms of moving forward. So thank you for all of you, and whomever I've missed, probably others like Amy were really helpful, and Lisa as well, but and Jim, but thank you all for doing this. I think it's a very important and positive thing to keep focus on that, because I think you're absolutely right. I think this is probably a time when the isolation is becoming just enormously challenging for many who maybe weren't even challenged before. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, Nell. Thank you. And it's also a great partnership with the city and the university, that Gown and Town initiative. It's refreshing because there's so much that's negative right now. It is refreshing to have such a positive thing. And the students are so excited about it. And students who never had even considered intergenerational relationships and were not aware of ageism issues, and through their education as the scholars, they're learning that, wow, this is a neat initiative. And so it's expanding their horizons as well.
Well, I'd like to step in and speak. This is Jim Levandy. I used to have a school superintendent who used to talk about lighthouse issues. And I think this grant and the pilot project and everything that's going on is a lighthouse for other communities. And the second thing I'd like to point out is that it really enhances our, as Lori has already said, this town and gown relationship, that we have an age-friendly university, which is approved. We have an age-friendly city, and we're working together, which I am very, very pleased with. Thank you, Lori, and everyone else who's worked on it.
Sure, our pleasure.
Any other comments? Well, I guess I'm up next on the agenda. You already have it on your shared screen, is that timeline. I'd like to thank Pam Weil. She and I discussed it. She had a template and I readopted it so that we could at least get something to see how we are progressing. Those green shaded areas are my estimation of how those particular items in each domain go forward. You'll notice there's a little dark patch down toward the bottom under, and it's so, the print is so fine, but I'm hoping that you have a copy. I believe I emailed out to everyone earlier this year, and going to ask that if you have a copy, go to the copy and start shading it what you think. Those are my perceptions of what's going on. Please add what you want. You can email them to me, to Kelly and Amy, so that we have, and we can compile them later for you so that you can see as we make progress. Are there any questions about the timelines as they're, and I apologize again, the print is small, but we couldn't fit 7 more pages in that packet. Any comment? Yes, Jeff. You're muted, Jeff. There you
Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud. I apologize.
go. No
I'm
comment?
I don't have a comment. I'm trying to make the screen larger so I can see.
Yeah. I know I have my personal copy all set up with each domain on a separate page.
Jim, this is Lori.
Go ahead,
Jim,
Laura.
can you clarify again what the darker box means, please?
The darker box is my perception of the progress we made on those 2 particular items. And the lighter box shading is a kind of a timeline that I felt we could use to accomplish our goals.
Okay.
But again, everybody has a little different perception about this, and I'm not asking you to accept mine. I'd like to get input from everyone. I'd loan you my magnifying glass that I have here somewhere on my desk, but that isn't going to help on Zoom.
Well, despite the Newman Loft issue, we do have effort towards senior housing in East Lansing now.
Yes. Jeff, did you find anything on there you'd like to comment on? I know you were trying to get your screen larger.
Yep, I was able to see it a little bit larger, and I'm kind of going through it. So, but I don't believe I got this ahead of time in an email. I'm looking back, and I don't see that, but
It was a packet attachment.
okay.
Everything that's on the shared screen was in the packet.
Okay.
I'm going to come back to you.
Jim, this is Nell. Do you
Yeah.
remember the date you sent that packet? It might help all of us.
I'd have to go back through my record of when I sent that, and I don't want to leave this website to move to that.
Correct. I understand. Maybe you could send us a note afterward
Now,
and let us, yes.
Amy sent it yesterday. There was a
Amy
packet
sent
that
it to
came
us
from
yesterday,
email.
but I sent a copy out sometime back,
Mhm.
and I cannot
Okay.
remember when.
Okay, well, if Amy sent it yesterday, thank you, Kristen. That's very helpful. I simply didn't take the time to open everything that was sent to us. So thank you. That's good to know.
Okay,
I apologize. It doesn't look like I received anything from Jim or Amy with attachments. So I'd be happy to take a look at them offline.
okay.
I can forward you that attachment, Jeff.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, next item is city actions that are happening. Before I ask Tom to start speaking, I had the thought that we have a lot of things going on in the city that complement or parallel and contribute to this action plan that really aren't in the goals. But I'm a systems thinker, and since we are part of a system here, I'd like to ask Tom to outline some things. I thought of two things immediately, and that was in the transportation area, the whole idea of every time we've redone a street, we've added bike lanes, which is a transportation issue. Those kinds of things. The expansion of the up north and the recreation areas and trails and things. So Tom, I'm going to turn over to you if you have any comments, if you want, or if you need some time to get back, and we can also add you to the agenda in a future meeting. So Tom?
Good morning, everybody. Good to see you. It's hard to believe that we've been doing this pandemic thing for 7 months now. When this first kicked off, we were all thinking, hey, maybe three, 4 weeks, and then we'll all be back to normal. And at this point, at least from my perception, it seems like there's going to be a new normal ahead. That's going to be hopefully back in person to some extent. And I don't know when that will be, but I look forward to those days. And in the meantime, a lot has happened at the city and continues to. Obviously, we, for the first couple months really of this situation, we were really in a reaction mode, trying to figure out how to continue to provide the basic services of a local government, trying to communicate and coordinate communication with other layers of government, including public health, really trying to keep the continuity of operations going and help people stay safe. And then ultimately also trying to help our businesses survive. And unfortunately, we know that some have not, and probably others are near the end of their existence as well without additional support. So in terms of the community and economic development team, really we have really changed the focus to one of trying to connect the idea that business success is inextricably intertwined with our ability to keep people safe. And obviously in a community that has a large number of young people who might not take this pandemic as seriously as they need to, that has created additional challenges for us. So a lot of our resources and efforts as a community and economic development team, as a planning department, as a city, really have gone to sort of helping survive this, helping recover from this, and keep the operations of the city moving forward. We're now at a point where I think, we had a construction shutdown. We sent folks home for many weeks. We're now at kind of another junction of this pandemic where some of the normal business of the city, some of the forward-looking efforts of the city are somewhat back on track, and we're obviously doing it in a new way that's somewhat awkward and definitely not my ideal way. I'm a in-person kind of guy myself, but we continue to move forward. We've had several projects go through the planning commission and to the council and get approved. We have new construction going on, including the Provision Living, which is just getting underway on the north side of town. And obviously the, continued efforts on trying to diversify the downtown, not only in terms of housing, but also in terms of kind of the daytime population. And some really exciting news there with MSU FCU making a significant investment in a 7-story office building at the corner of Albert and Abbott, which should break ground here at the beginning of the year. In terms of the city, large amount of change. We have essentially a new city council. We have a new city attorney who started 2 weeks ago, and we have a new police chief. We are hiring 2 social workers in the police department and restructuring the department in some pretty significant ways. We have launched a housing study, which is going to be extremely important to many aspects of the city. And we are beginning an effort really from top down to and have hired hired a diversity, equity, and inclusion administrator for the city, who we all know well. And she's been doing a great job to get us going. And we have a really kind of a cultural change movement starting internally in the city with some pretty sharp consultants coming on board and a very intense program plan to really help move the city forward in terms of our diversity and inclusion. And I see in many of these aspects and many of these big, large initiatives that are happening, including the form-based code conversation happening at the Planning Commission, we need to really include this idea of age-friendly communities. I think instead of really viewing this as an effort on its own, it's really an effort that needs to integrate with every other effort that's going on in the city. And so when I look at this list, that's really where my mind starts going is not in terms of creating new, necessarily creating new resources and new programs and kind of things that exist on their own, but integrating the ideas that come from age-friendly communities into what is the main thrust of what the city's doing. And I think that should be sort of our mindset. I know there will be needs for new resources and probably for some new programs as well. But I think in this era of pandemic, in sort of the concerns for the budgetary situation ahead, and the fact that the limited staff resources that we had now have additional responsibilities on their plate, because of this pandemic and how we've had to change our work. So that's really what I would encourage this committee to think about, and also think about what are really the priority areas where we should be activating volunteers and activating the limited staff resource that we have to make the most amount of difference in moving these ideas forward. So I guess that's my long-winded diatribe.
Well, that wasn't real long-winded, Tom, and thank you. Are there any questions for Tom?
Yes, Pat Cannon has a question.
Go ahead, Pat.
To what extent, if any, is the work of your housing study aligning with the recommendations that we put in our document?
We're not there yet in terms of integration. We're, because of COVID, what we didn't want to do with the study was to study the effects of COVID on our housing supply, et cetera. So what we ended up doing was we bifurcated the study into 2 phases. Phase 1, where they're really doing the deep dive into kind of most of the things that won't change, like what's currently built, what are the prices, who's living here, those types of things. And really in phase 2, which is currently envisioned as kind of a post-COVID situation. That's when they'd be getting into sort of more of the policy type issues. Of course, they're reviewing all of our housing policies in phase one and kind of getting the lay of the land. But in phase two, that's where we'd be having the conversations about, recommended policy changes or policy discussions that we should be having as a community. And I think certainly the Housing Commission and certainly age-friendly communities would have an interest in exploring those conversations.
Thank you, Tom.
Any other questions?
Jim, Nell?
Nell, go ahead.
I'm not sure I fully understood, Tom, so please correct me if I didn't hear you accurately, but I thought you said something about provision housing on the north end, and maybe I misunderstood. Could you explain? If I did misunderstand, just tell me what you said, and if I didn't, please give a little fuller explanation of what you mean by that.
Sure. There's I think a 3-phase development that is housing for seniors in various formats. And that project was approved, I want to say late last year, and is now going underway. It's just south of the Aquatic Center, and they've broken ground there and are beginning the development. It'll take quite some time, I'm sure.
And what was the word provision, or did I misunderstand that? Is that the development company?
It's the name of the development. The Provision Living, I think is what it's called.
And is it independent and then assisted and then nursing care? Are those the 3 phases they're looking at?
Yes.
Okay. And finally, is that within our city limits?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Tom?
Sure, this is Lori. Tom, I'm curious, is that a private business coming in or is it a nonprofit? Do you know?
I believe it is a private enterprise, but I'm not certain that it's not a nonprofit. There may be a nonprofit element to it. That I'd have to look I'd have to dust off my memory on that one. But I'd be happy to do that, Lori. I can send you more information about it.
Okay, is Provision Living the name of the corporation or just the name of the complex?
I believe it's the name of the complex. I cannot recall the name of the actual company, but again, I can dig into that for you if you have interest.
Okay, thank you. I would like to know more.
Me too.
Any-
Could you send that information to all of us who wish to have it? I would be on that list.
I'll just send it to the whole committee. If that's easier.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
I'll ask our planning and zoning administrator to give us some background on that as well.
And
Thank you.
Lisa just put into the chat a link to provision housing. I don't know what it is, but there's at least that link. If there's more, Tom, I think we would appreciate it. I apologize. This is Nell. I just sort of blurted out.
Yeah, there's definitely more. It's a fairly complex project, so I can send you as much detail as we have in terms of the site plan. You can kind of get a sense for it.
Any other questions? Well, we're back to the bottom of the list, discussion of next steps. And I've got 2 things down here in my notes. Meeting dates and a consideration of whether individuals or the steering committee should address the Newman Lofts issue with council. So I'm going to go to meeting dates. I know we're on record as saying we'd like to meet monthly, but with Zoom and other things and limited resources, we have to consider current circumstances. So I'm going to open it up to discussion. My recommendation would be to meet quarterly, but that's up to you. I don't care. I'm here, I'm sitting in front of my computer, and everything is okay with me, whichever way we go. So your turn now.
This is Pat Cannon. I feel like we've lost a little time due to the fact we haven't met for several months because of the virus. So I would like to see us not go to quarterly. Quarterly sounds far away now because our next meeting wouldn't be till next year.
I agree with that. I was thinking more like every other month if we can't do it monthly. I feel like we've lost momentum as well.
Okay, any other comments?
This is Nell. And I will say I have not been very diligent in even preparing for today. I didn't get an opportunity or make an opportunity to look at the packet that Amy sent us. And when I tried to make the attachments large, I still couldn't read the whole chart that you were gracious enough to send to us. So I'm not the best person, but I also don't, Lori, you have momentum going on something right now, but I'm not sure. I don't feel as if there is a great deal that and maybe it's just my laziness in the pandemic, but that I would be offering. I'm happy to meet every other month. That's not a problem. I'm just not sure that I feel I have any, I don't know. I think inertia can be both a movement forward that continues and it can be sort of a pulling back. And I think I'm more on the, I'm sort of in the inertia that sort of is just sort of, dragging my heels. And so I'm comfortable with either way we meet. I just wanted to say, and let me, as an aside, say, I know there's a lot going on at the library. I know that Kristen is making just tremendous efforts as with her staff and the city to keep things going there. The minutes reflected that Jesse Gregg had been meeting there and the Check Out a Human had started. And now, of course, that's not happening because you can't put Jesse in a pickup box, I don't think. But I guess I would just like to offer a little bit of I don't feel like I'm contributing very much right now. And so I'm happy with either kind of meeting date because I don't feel like I'm contributing to a lot of forward movement, but I sure do talk a lot, so I'll be quiet.
I have the dates for the remaining of this year, and it's the 19th of November and the 17th of December. So keep that in mind for your consideration. That falls well before a week before Thanksgiving and well before Christmas. Any other?
It's Lisa, Jim.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I think I just want to echo part of what Tom shared, and that most of the city staff, we're reinventing programs and ways of doing things. And at least from my perspective, monthly meetings are a lot. So even if we didn't meet quarterly, but maybe every other month, if there is something that we could consider more along those lines, I know that I personally would really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa. Any other comments?
Jim, Kathy Boyle.
Kathy, your camera has now just given the top of your head. I don't know what.
Well, that's the problem with seeing the agenda instead of all the participants. I have no idea where my camera is pointed right now.
Yeah, that's a little better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it sounds to me like every other month might be what we want to do, particularly while we're working on the tools we're going to use to track our progress. We just got the new timeline. I haven't had a chance to really review it and understand it yet. I hate to wait 3 months before we discuss it further. So I would be in favor of every other month.
Well, if you will allow me to make a unilateral decision as chair, I suggest then that we hold our next meeting on the 17th of December, which would be every other month, and start preparing for it right now. Is there any objection? Do you want to vote? Well, then allowing the chair to make that unilateral decision, I'm going to say Our next meeting is the 12th month, 17th day of 2020.
I agree.
Okay. On our recording, our concerns about the Newman Lofts. I'm going to open up discussion on that.
This is Nell.
Yeah,
For the purposes of discussion, I would like to make a motion, and I would move that as a committee, we designate the chair and the, I think it's our secretary, Kathy is who I'm thinking of, to draft a letter from the Age-Friendly Community Committee or Commission or whatever we are to the City Council at their earliest convenience to express our significant concerns with the Newman Lofts effort to be allowed to get out of their agreement to provide senior housing, and that we object to that request being granted. That's the end of my motion, and then I'll probably talk more as we go
okay. Is
further into it.
second support for Nell's motion.
This is Lori Strom will second.
Okay, we now have a motion on the floor and we're open for discussion.
This is Nell, can I just discuss a little more fully? Jim,
Please
is that
do.
okay? I would just like to say, I am certainly not as well-versed as I believe Kathleen is, certainly not as the staff is. What I have is the knowledge that I think I have gleaned from reporting. I think it's primarily in ELI. And while I understand that I'm not a big fan always of reporting because I know that reporters do get things wrong sometimes, what it appears to me is that there is evidence that from the very outset, these individuals had no intention of meeting that commitment. And I find that worse than abhorrent. I mean, I find it very, very discouraging that they're seeking to get out of this, but then to have information that from the very beginning, they were apparently thinking they were never going to be able to meet that commitment. I don't know if we need to say that, but unless someone can tell me that that's an inappropriate understanding on my part, I think that makes it even worse. I think it makes it look like we're being played as a city for a bunch of fools by, well, I just don't need to go on because you know me, I can go on. But I just find it very disturbing. And I think that it is not something that they should be allowed to disavow. I'm done.
Any other discussion?
Jim, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh, thanks, Kathy. This is Lori. I was just going to say, I never have seen any kinds of promotion or advertising for that housing. I wonder how much effort the company has put into making sure that as a marketing message, they're encouraging seniors to move into that building. Maybe that's part of what they're lacking is promotion.
I don't think that they've been promoting. We, as a senior commission member, the commission toured the facility, and we made some comments during the tour about the lack of universal design in many of the units that were supposedly for 55 plus. And then there were the things about the extras on the fees that they were charging on top of the rent or purchase price. I don't know whether they're condos or just regular apartments. But I think Kathy Boyle had jumped in. Kathy, did you have any comments?
Yes, and I'll try not to go on too long. First of all, the city for some years has been really endeavoring to diversify housing, particularly in the downtown area. And several years ago, they passed an ordinance which requires that mixed use developments in the DDA, and that's just the heart of downtown, that contain housing have a certain percentage of housing that is either dedicated to 55 plus or owner occupied or income qualified. Now, since that has been enacted, the landmark on Grand River, which is part of the development that Newman Lofts is a part of, has been approved. In addition, the buildings at the corner of Grand River and Abbott has been approved. And both of those projects contain a part that meets this requirement. For the Newman Lofts, it's 55 plus. For the other development, it's income qualified housing, which the Planning Commission hasn't even seen plans for yet. They've gone ahead and they're building the hotel and the apartments, but we've seen nothing about the income qualified housing. So they don't seem too enthusiastic about working on the diversity of the that developer doesn't seem to be too enthusiastic about working on the diversity of housing downtown. But anyway, it is now a city requirement. When the developer came before the Planning Commission with plans to make this particular building, which is right opposite Harper's, 55 plus, they were questioned quite thoroughly about the suitability of housing in this location, being 55 plus, given the hubbub and noise that can sometimes be in downtown East Lansing. And they responded that they have experience with 55 plus housing and that they were very confident that they would be able to market and rent these units. And they are apartments, it's not owner occupied. These units to active seniors. And some of the people who have been involved in senior housing in East Lansing, including Ray Vlassen and Betty Nocera, spoke in favor of the housing. It was eventually approved and is part of the agreement that allowed the developer to build on what is city property, the old parking lot 1. I think I have gotten some marketing about it via Facebook. That's the only marketing I've seen. Bircham Hills seems to write me at least once or twice a month about their new apartments. I've gotten nothing to that at scale from Newman Lofts. But they have, I believe, rented something like 25% of their units already to 55 plus people. Listening to the developer, it appears that they were marketing with the idea it would be alums coming to town for games. Certainly that's going to be impacted by what's happening with COVID. But I think the biggest challenge for seniors is the price of these units. And that's always been the problem for diversity of housing in downtown East Lansing. Students will pay more than the rest of us, not just seniors, but families with young children and young professionals and middle-aged professionals. Students will pay more and can pay more. So when you build housing downtown and you price it for students and it fills up with students. These units are priced the same as if you were putting students in them. They're over $2,000 for a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. The Beaumont, which is not age qualified, but has a variety of ages living in it, and it's in the northern side of East Lansing. Those units for 2-bedroom, 2-bath are something like $1,500 a month. So I think one of the challenges the Lofts has had is that the units are so expensive, that the apartments are so expensive. And I think that's the first thing they should do before they ask to have the age restriction lifted. But I think that's neither here nor there. I guess my feeling in communicating, and I'll talk to Jim about this as we work on the letter, my feeling is that we want the city to know that we support that ordinance that requires age qualified housing as one of the components in development downtown. And that we certainly want them to hold this developer who knowingly agreed to this, to that agreement. So that would be my, perhaps more information than you wanted to hear, but my assessment of the situation.
I appreciate the information. Thank you. This is Pat.
Very good.
Can I just add one slight correction? Because I think I heard Ms. Boyle say that the Park District folks in their low to moderate income building did not have plans. Was that, did you say that?
I haven't seen any plans for Building C.
Okay, so I just wanted to correct that because there are approved plans for Building C, and I can send those over to you. And I think the developer is working to get their building plan set in and expects to pull for building permits as early as the first of the year.
Well, that's good news.
Any other discussion?
Yes, Jim, I have a question. You mentioned
Go ahead, Pat.
charging fees on top of rent. What were the extra fees for? Do you recall?
Parking and
Uh-huh.
trash removal, if I remember correctly.
All right. I was only raising the question because sometimes people want to charge a surcharge for accessibility enhancements, which is prohibited by the ADA and fair housing.
Yeah, I think they avoided that, but most people would have to have mobility outside of the city, so they're charging for parking and for trash removal.
Jim, this is Nell again.
Yeah.
Since Pat raised that question, I don't know if there's any truth to this, and maybe Kathleen knows this, or certainly Tom, but I had heard that accessibility was an issue with the construction of the Newman Lofts, and in particular in the area that's supposed to be available to 55 plus. Is there any truth to what I have heard?
No, I don't believe so. I think our building official looked very closely at that issue and determined that they're compliant in terms of our code.
And with the ADA?
I think that would be an extension of that, yes. I recall a conversation regarding the ADA. I would have to, I'd have to review that file some time ago, but I don't remember any concerns related to the ADA.
Thank you.
Now, at one time, when the senior commission toured the Newman Lofts, there was issues. They didn't put walk-in showers in, they put tubs in. So the seniors tried to get over the tub and they couldn't. So I believe what they did was they took like 50 apartments that had tubs in them and put a stand-in shower in instead. So they moved those out and corrected their error. And there were other smaller issues as far as in the kitchen area, having things way far up. The seniors couldn't reach the, far up. And there were other issues. I can pull up the senior commission's report afterwards, because we came back and we said, what are the pros, what are the cons? And I'll be happy to share those with you. I can pull those up. But I think they have kind of, well, I don't know if they've improved things or not. I haven't been back.
This
So-
is Pat. I believe there was also an issue with round doorknobs as opposed to the levered handles.
Yes, and I think they might have changed that as well, because the senior commission had expressed those issues with them. And I'm not sure, but I think those have been switched out as well.
Yes, and sorry, let me be more clear. I didn't mean to imply that there weren't issues. What I meant to say was that, the issues were addressed to the satisfaction of our building official.
Sure, yep.
Any
So
other
just
discussion?
Just to clarify, your building codes don't necessarily meet ADA compliance codes. There's two separate guidelines there. So you could pass your building codes and they claim it can be accessible, but that doesn't mean they meet ADA requirements.
I agree with you, Phil. It's been 20 years since I was doing this, but I was inspecting schools for ADA, and you're right. They're two different things.
And
Unless-
Jim?
Unless we had an ADA compliant officer come in and audit the apartments, it's hard to describe if they are in compliance with ADA or not.
Correct.
And Jim, this is Nell. I think that was Sam who shared that with us, and I really appreciate that, Sam, from your knowledge and experience. And I think that's something I would like to see included in your letter, that we are concerned that perhaps that meeting code does not mean meeting ADA accessibility, and that we would ask the city to look very seriously on that now and for the future, because I think what happens is all of us who have our unchallenged abilities, when we are at the policy-making and decision-making stage, everything looks good. And as we age and we learn that certain things just aren't quite as easy as they used to be, even for those of us who are blessed with the better situation of health, that those things are just sort of shuffled aside. And I think that's what's happening in these kinds of situations. And I think that unfortunately the whole issue of profit and what I can get out of it is taking front seat in almost everything, every decision that's made. And I'm an MSU business school grad. And I will tell you that I find it appalling that that has gotten to that point, but that's my political statement. But it also is a statement candidly on Newman Lofts. I'm appalled that there is a local businessman who is part of that and hasn't asked for more or demanded more than he has. But, I don't know him well enough to know what he has tried to do, but I just find the whole thing appalling. And I appreciate Sam's knowledge and expertise, because at least from what I know of Sam, he's doing a tremendous amount of work to try to help people make their homes work better for them as they age. And as a younger person, he still has an awareness and a sensitivity and understands that what these folks are doing to meet code, doesn't meet what needs to be done. And I'm going to make one horrible political statement right now, but I have this real concern, and I adore all the staff who are working with us, but I have been told many times that staff approved the apartment building in downtown East Lansing, which has a cross built into it on the side. And I find that so offensive that I just think we all need to check ourselves over and over again when we say, oh, they've met their qualifications. We need to look at the most significant detail. Seems to me that a 5 to 7 foot tall cross isn't detail, but it was missed, I'm told, by the staff. And I just want to say, I think we need to hold our city, and maybe it's the Planning Commission and others too, to the highest of detailed standard. I'll be finished. Thank you.
Thanks, Nell. Any other discussion?
Yes, Pat has a question for Sam.
Okay.
Sam, it's been my understanding in the past, and I am not familiar with any changes, that actually housing doesn't come under ADA to the extent that the Fair Housing Amendments Act does. Is that still the case?
I believe so, Pat. I don't know specifically,
Yeah.
but I would believe that's true.
We tend to say use ADA as a pronoun instead of just talking about accessibility. But I think the Fair Housing Amendments Act is what governs the accessibility standards for housing and apartments, et cetera.
Correct.
And this is Nell. Can I ask, are those, and Patrick, thank you again for your knowledge also, but are those standards less for housing because for whatever reason? And why would that apply? I know I heard you say apartments, but why would that apply to commercial building of multiple housing units? Do either of you know?
No, I was not involved at all when they were passing the Fair Housing Amendments Act.
Okay.
That's a funny area now that you bring that up, because the exteriors in public bathroom restrooms follow the ADA guidelines, from ramping to railing to grab bars around the toilet, the size of the bathroom and stuff. But when you get into the interior of the apartment, it falls short. For some reason, there's a disconnect between the exterior and then going into the interior. You know, they changed out the bathtubs and they put in shower units, but you got to still step over those shower units, which technically is not ADA compliant.
So they're not roll-in showers.
No.
Anything else?
Well, is Tom still here? Because the city has the new universal design requirements for new construction as well. And Tom might be better to speak to that than me.
I'm not sure if that's the case. I think you might be better speaking at that particular issue than me. But I know that is in fact the case. We do have universal design requirements. I believe the city does not enforce ADA, and I believe that is correct. We only enforce our code. But we're definitely outside of my expertise at this particular juncture. So I mean, I'd be happy to get the right experts on my team to join this conversation and provide good guidance.
This is Pat. My understanding of the universal design is not as high a standard as the ADA precisely, but it does provide for construction in a way that lends itself to become fully accessible. But some of the minimum things would be the width of doors and the width of hallways and so forth, so the wheelchairs could navigate those paths. But it provides some minimal design requirements for accessibility, but they are to be adaptable to more stringent standards.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. This is Kathy again, Kathy. And that's, I think, basically what the city has done. And maybe a quick report at our next meeting might be helpful to committee members. But there are type A and type B units under the city code now. Type A units are basically wheelchair accessible, and type B are have the wider hallways, and are adaptable for more accessibility. And then there's certain requirements as to how many of each unit there have to be. But I believe at a minimum they have to at least meet the lower type B standard in all new construction that includes housing. Multiple family housing of more than 4 units, I think it is.
I believe that is correct. And I also believe that a certain number of them have to meet the type A, a certain percentage, but I think it would be good for, and I'd be happy to bring back, the facts to you at the next meeting. And I can even ask our building official to come and talk with you all as well. I think that could be a productive conversation. Certainly far more productive than you'll have with my lack of understanding here.
Okay. Tom, I have a question. You mentioned that the city does not enforce ADA standards. Is that because the city's standards are actually as stringent as the ADA standards or more so?
I think it has to do with the ADA is federal law and we enforce local ordinances. But I think that's another area where our building official could certainly be much more facile and explaining the nuances there.
Yeah, I think the city is still required, at least at a minimal level, to adhere to the ADA standards.
I think that's certainly true in terms of the design of the public right of way and sort of the stuff that's in the Department of Public Works bailiwick, where we are updating sidewalks and those types of things. But again, I think this would be a really productive conversation to bring some of the subject matter experts from the city into, and they can answer your questions and have a lot more nuanceical conversation with you.
Perhaps you could invite that individual to our December meeting.
Yes, I'd be happy to do that.
You okay with that, Jim? I think Jim has left the building like Elvis.
So I don't see Jim anymore on the platform. I am searching. But
Oh, yeah, he's
connected. But I will make a note that we are, and work with Mr. Fehrenbach to invite that individual to the next meeting after I speak with Jim.
Thank you.
So it looks like.
So I guess what might be appropriate at this time, unless anyone has anything else to gather, is that we would make a vote. There's a motion on the floor. So next would need to be a vote of approval. If folks are comfortable with that.
Every other month, you mean?
In terms of writing the letter.
Oh.
So if I'm not seeing any objections, so I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call vote at this time. Kelly Aarp.
Aye. Yes.
Pat Cannon.
Aye.
Tom Fehrenbach.
Aye.
Jeff Kiesler.
Aye.
Nell Kumanich. Did we lose Nell? Nell, are you there?
Unmuted. Yeah, sorry, I was trying to get unmuted and I lost the screen. Aye.
Pam Meadows.
Aye.
Lisa Ritchie.
Aye.
Kristen Shelley.
Aye.
Lori Strom.
Aye.
Sam Tucker.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. I think unless there is anything else that committee members would like to discuss, we could, which we're certainly happy to do, we could entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support from Pat.
Very good. I will do a roll call vote. Kelly Aarp.
Aye.
Kathleen Boyle.
aye.
Pat Cannon.
Aye.
Tom Fehrenbach.
Aye.
Jeff Kiesler.
Aye.
Nell Kumanich.
Aye.
Pam Meadows.
Sorry, aye.
That's okay. Lisa Ritchie.
Aye.
Kristen Shelley. Lori Strong
Aye.
and Sam Tucker.
Aye.
That motion passes. Okay, we will certainly be in touch regarding a meeting on December 17th. I know that there are a couple of items that you have asked for some follow-up on, one being the provision housing. The second, perhaps asking one of our building and code enforcement officials to speak with you more in detail. And thank you very much for everyone's patience as we work through Zoom. We know it's a little bit different format, but I think that I personally feel like we had some great discussion, and we look forward to seeing you all soon.
Hey, Sam, I love your commercials. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. Have a great
Bye,
day.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.
So, perfect.